What's up, YouTube? We're going to talk essential metal today. Satyricon's third record, Nemesis Divina. I'm really psyched to finally talk some black metal on this channel. Nemesis Divina, it's a record I've wanted to do a video on for a while now. Not only is it an undisputed landmark in black metal and kind of a unifying force for different pockets of extreme metal fans, but personally, this album has a permanent spot in my top 5 black metal albums of all time. I'm talking from the early 80s all the way through 2016. I could listen to Nemesis Divina every single day and never really get bored of it. And that's not something I can say about a lot of my favorite records. So just some quick context. Like I said, this is the band's third record. Came out in April of 1996. This past May, actually, the band released a 20th anniversary edition of the record. And they even did a string of European shows where they played the entire album front to back. Just chalk that up as another cool thing that European metalheads get to see that we don't. Right up there with Bloodstock and Download and God knows what else. Given that this album arrived in 1996, it kind of came towards the end of what we call the second wave of black metal or Norwegian black metal. By 1996, all the main murders had happened, all the prominent church burnings had happened, and a lot of the important albums had happened as well. Darkthrone, Blaze in the Northern Sky, Emperor Into the Nightside Eclipse, Mayhem de Mysteris, etc., etc. As kind of a later second wave of black metal album, Nemesis Divina is significant, to me at least, because it clearly fits right in sonically and musically with those other albums I mentioned. But it also kind of stretches the limitations of the genre and clearly doesn't really give a shit about the strict rules of what is and isn't black metal, especially the rules that existed in the mid-90s. And that's kind of why I referred to it earlier as like a unifying force. Because those people who aren't black metal aficionados and who can't take depressive and ambient black metal or maybe the first Burzum album, like more of the lo-fi stuff, people like that can find a lot of things to latch onto with this album. I'm just going to jump right into the two most obvious examples of this. Exhibit A is what's probably the most infamous moment on the record, and that's the folk metal melody that closes out track 2, the title of which I'm not going to try to pronounce, but it translates to Bewitched. Now, at the time, the inception of what we've come to know as folk metal was going on kind of in a similar area and at the same time, and what a lot of people don't know is Satyricon's band leader, Satyr, there's a lot of different pronunciations of that, was actually in this band called Storm with Fenris from Darkthrone, and they put out one record in 1995 that kind of had like a folk metal-y, like Viking metal thing going on. So it actually wasn't as crazy as it probably sounds to people who don't have that context. But I digress. What's so great about this passage is that it's the ultimate musical left turn. Like, I literally laughed out loud the first time I heard this. Because before this section, this ending section of track 2, you have the epic winding opener, Dawn of a New Age, and then you have the first few minutes of this song, which consists of prominent double bass drums, those marching, openly strummed black metal rhythms that are Bathory influenced. At the 1 minute 40-second mark of this song, you have the keyboards and guitars kind of working in tandem, which is something that obviously Children of Bodom would take and run with it later on. You have a lot of different elements at play here, many of them pretty traditional black metal elements, but once the rhythm part that sits under the folk melody kind of kicks in, it kicks in for 2 repetitions before the melody comes in. It's strange because it almost feels like the song had been building to this moment the entire time. You really can't imagine this song without that part. Exhibit B on here of Satyricon kind of separating themselves from the pack when it comes to the second wave of black metal comes in the middle of the title track. At both the 2 minute 45 mark and the 3 minute mark, there are these abrupt transitions into these 2 riffs, the latter one especially, that sounds straight off of Slayer's South of Heaven. Of course, following these 2 riffs is one of the most blistering blast beat sections on the entire record, but it's this quick little 30-second window that sticks out more and more every time I listen to this record. Because not only does it contrast the rest of the song nicely, but if you're a thrash fan listening to this, there's something for you that's familiar, something that you can immediately identify with. I'll even go as far to say that at the 4-minute 10-second mark of this song, there's even a little something to identify with for new wave of British heavy metal fans. And look, I'm not saying that a record should pander, but it's these subtle incorporations of these different subgenres that adds up to a record that's more welcoming and oftentimes more interesting than your standard mid-90s black metal release. But to be perfectly clear here, I'm not trying to paint Nemesis Divina as this oddball album. Yes, it has a few real unique qualities that help it stand out, but actually it's really the quintessential black metal album in the best way possible, and nowhere is that more obvious than on the track Mother North. I don't think anyone would argue with me when I say that Mother North is basically this album's centerpiece. If you're watching this and you've never heard Nemesis Divina, this is definitely the first track to sort of dip your toes into. It's one of those tracks that you show somebody when you want to convey what black metal sounds like or what black metal is. I mean, first time I heard it as a 14-year-old kid, it scared the shit out of me, which is what good black metal kind of should do. There's so much about this song. There's the iconic tremolo-picking guitar riff that kicks things off. Then 30 seconds in, when Satyr's vocals enter, he's accompanied by keyboards and what sounds like a choir backing vocal to create that epic yet brooding sound. And that keyboard and vocal backdrop disappears but returns shortly thereafter, and it creates almost like a hook or a refrain of sorts. At 1 minute and 19 seconds in, you have another golden tremolo picking riff with this double bass groove underneath it. I love how raw and slightly underproduced the drum sound here. It's not a Saint Anger type of underproduced, but when people criticize like new wave of American heavy metal bands like Lamb of God for sounding overproduced, it's because of the rawness of a record like Nemesis Divina. The drums aren't like shimmering and pretty, but they're extremely effective sounding the way they sound. I'd also like to point out that Mother North is a very dynamic song. Things slow to a crawl in the middle portion, first to this halftime riff and then to this section that's basically carried entirely by keyboards and bass guitar melodies. If you're looking to pinpoint the exact location, it's 3 minutes and 6 seconds in. It's perhaps the most grand yet sinister sounding moment on the whole LP. Not to mention Satyr's vocal here combined with the keys is a huge precursor to Cradle of Filth and the direction they would take the genre in. And we eventually arrive at what to me is the climax of the song, which is the 1-2 punch of this frantic, mind-blowing harmonized tremolo-picking guitar section, which immediately shifts into just the meanest headbanging riff. This all occurs from about 4 minutes 5 seconds to about 5 minutes 30 seconds. This is the moment where, even if you don't listen to much of the genre, you realize that you're hearing black metal perfection. The track following Mother North is Du Sam Hatter Gut, which God knows how badly I just butchered that, because my pronunciation of any European language is basically just informed by the little German that I know, but it translates to You Who Hate God. And it's another song that has something a bit different going on in that the last minute of it features this lovely grand piano melody being played on top of this neoclassical distorted guitar progression. Very cool. It's another moment where you can kind of see the genre expand before your very eyes. Following that track is Immortality Passion, another incredible song and the longest on the LP, though it certainly doesn't feel that way. This one features the coolest melody on the whole album and simultaneously the longest running musical idea, this being the rapidly strummed section from about 1:45 to about 3:30, and it also resurfaces in like a more noodly form about a minute later. As with Mother North and its reoccurring keyboard part, this long stretch of one idea, and also the fact that it reappears a minute later, it gives this song a cohesion that's a little unusual to black metal, yet the song still feels loosely structured, and it still gradually progresses into different territory, which to me is like the coolest thing about the genre of black metal, the lack of structure. So before I get carried away here and kind of beat this thing to death with analysis, I hope that I've established that Nemesis Divina is a must-listen for anybody with even a passing interest in metal music. If you're looking to get into black metal, you literally cannot find a better gateway album than this one. If you're already a big fan of black metal, then you've already heard this album, and I really hope you enjoyed my perspective on it. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, or shoot me a message so we can continue to talk music, and I will see you guys soon.